Hello, everybody, and welcome to your post-daily news show for Wednesday, July the 13th. I am John Pollock alongside Wai Ting. Hello, Wai.
Hey, John, how you doing?
I'm doing swell. I'm doing fantastic.
Swell. That's good. Yeah. That's good. Are you gonna miss these 1 o'clock every single weekday?
Yes and no. Yes and no. It will be somewhat of an alleviation of my schedule. There are certain days I very much look forward to these. There are others where it just depends on my day and what else is going on. It sometimes becomes tricky. So, yes and no.
Yeah, I'm the same. Yes and no. Yes and no. I'll miss hearing from the Post Wrestling Cafe audience, but I mean we'll still be around, of course, Mondays, Wednesdays, and pretty much every day, honestly.
Yeah, I really don't want to paint this as like we're going away because it's like, guys, it's insane. Okay, we're doing like 8 shows a week. We're going from
like 12 shows a week to maybe 7 shows a week. So I suppose it won't be that big of a difference, but yeah, whatever. It'll be, and we'll still be back again. I think occasionally for the obviously for the G1, and then for the post, like any sort of breaking news, I'm sure we'll continue to jump here at 1 o'clock.
We'll talk about this a bit more on Friday as we are the state of the new show and where things are going. So you can tune in Friday. We'll talk a bit more about that at length. But off the top, I do want to mention that the latest Rewind Away is out. This brought me back to days of having to record shows multiple times because of technological errors. Now, that was not the issue in this case. We had other technological issues. That this was quite the chore to put this show together, where we sat down at 11:30 a.m. and we hit stop and finished the show at around 9:30 p.m. on Tuesday night to bring you a 2.5-hour discussion about the first 3 episodes of Drive to Survive Season 1.
It was an episode we had to record in pieces, and I mean, I don't know if anybody would notice, honestly, if we didn't mention it. I think we're just, we're such seasoned professionals at this point that we could, I mean, you know what, maybe fitting with the theme of the show, because this is a show that, I mean, as much as we enjoy it, has been criticized by some F1 fans for some manipulation of real timeline events. So, you know what, maybe we did it on purpose. But I really enjoyed the discussion, John. This was like, I mean, we've been kind of sneaking in our little F1 conversations here and there for several months now. And this was where we got to go all out on it for 2.5 hours, just talking about F1 and our love of Formula One Drive to Survive, the series on Netflix, with specific focus of the first 3 episodes from season 1.
Yeah, I'm no longer going to throw in the caveat of, I know this might not be for everybody, or you can fast forward through this, because I have not gotten, number one, I have gotten no pushback from that. Number 2, I have sensed more interest in this show than many other recent reviews that we have done. So it seems like there is, I'm not going to say everybody, but I think a healthy percentage were very intrigued to hear us chat about this and set aside an entire show to sort of discuss the genesis of our interest in F1 and start from the beginning. Like, this is a great jumping on point if you're someone that's heard us talk about this but haven't really connected the dots about the players, the teams, and F1 itself. And, going back to the start of Drive to Survive is as strong a jumping on point as I imagine newer fans are going to find.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've received more feedback for this one than many of our rewind aways for several weeks now. Same with Ms. Marvel, actually. So, the Post Wrestling Cafe tends to be the place where I think a lot of people, we get to take a lot more risks with what we cover besides professional wrestling. And it's received some pretty good response.
Yeah. So 2.5 hours, some great feedback we got to this, like a lot of great pieces of feedback that we got of varying degrees of F1 fandom, from people that are brand new to it, others that have been watching for years. We have some person who writes about it as well. So some great feedback on this edition of Rewind Away as well. And that is up for all tiers at postwrestlingcafe.com. The cafe is bumping, as the kids might say, because we are getting ready.
Kids do not say that.
Do they not?
I don't think so anymore.
Oh, okay. I'm introducing it.
Yeah, but
this coming weekend, it all begins. The G1 Climax podcast will begin this coming Saturday. We will have 2 shows out this weekend, and we'll be covering all of the events throughout the G1, culminating with 3 straight nights at Budokan Hall, August 16th, 17th, and 18th. And Wai and I, we will be doing some shows together. We will be doing some shows apart. And Wai Ting is going to navigate the G1 and a baby this summer. That is on his priority list.
That is correct. Yeah. So, Frank here. Frank, first of all, welcome. He says YouTube just recommended you to me out of the blue. He also says, might not be the best time to take your foot off the gas, but do what's best for y'all. And I respect that. Frank, this is probably his first time hearing us, but we will pun firmly intended. We will not be taking the foot off the gas at all. We are going through engine failure. Okay. We have a power unit failure, and we need to pull over to the side so that we can wheel the car back to the paddock so we can basically continue. And these changes aren't of course being taken lightly, but we will be still going on full steam ahead throughout all our G1 coverage. Tomorrow night, Ms. Marvel finale, WH Park, myself, Nate Milton making his return as well, Ahmad Butt also making a return as we talk about the season finale of Ms. Marvel, 10 p.m. Eastern time at the Post Wrestling Cafe on Thursday night.
What an entertaining room that is going to be.
It's going to be fun. Yeah,
some originals.
Totally.
Some OGs in our universe coming together for the finale. So you guys have definitely piqued my interest in Miss Marvel. So I am actually going to be off next week. I had planned this vacation with my family. So I'm almost done Stranger Things, and maybe Miss Marvel will be next.
Ooh, okay. I'd love to know your thoughts.
But when I say I'm almost done Stranger Things, that means I have 3 episodes left, which is approximately 18 hours left. So we will see.
Someday. Yeah.
So check out all of that. So this week, again, Rewind Away. That show is already up, covering the first 3 episodes of Drive to Survive. Ms. Marvel season finale will go down Thursday night with Wai Ting and company. And then Rewind to SmackDown. We will be live on Friday night taking your calls, whether it be wrestling-related questions, F1-related questions, G1 predictions. We'll do all of that stuff on Friday night, recapping SmackDown and Rampage. And then Saturday and Sunday, Wai will have G1 shows. The first night with Karen Peterson, the second night with WH Park. And I realized this just going through New Japan World's site is that both shows, they're up for free for non-subscribers of New Japan World. So everyone can watch those first 2 nights of the G1. And we will see how the tournament kicks off with 2 nights in Hokkaido.
I'm very excited. Enjoyed your preview yesterday. And if you haven't done so yet, go and make your picks up at postwrestling.com/G1 right now for our pool, which is free to enter and a great way to follow the entire tournament.
All right, let's get into some of the headlines today. WWE has announced, this is from their press release, it will host a multi-day talent tryout exclusively for current and recently graduated college athletes as part of SummerSlam week in Nashville. The 3-day event, presented by Pure Life Water, begins Wednesday, July 17th at the Wild Horse Saloon, a 60,000 square foot live music and event venue and staple of downtown Nashville. This is also the venue that The Undertaker is doing his, Dead man talk, one man dead talk.
They
obviously couldn't use dead man talks, dead man talking.
Dead man talking, isn't it? Wait, it's not dead man.
It's not dead man talking. It's anyway. It's the incorporation of a number and his name, and the comments are just going to go wild. So, they will host more than 50 males and females with collegiate athletic backgrounds across football, basketball, track and field, wrestling, volleyball, gymnastics, cheer, and dance. Athletes will partake in performance evaluations, individual and group promo evaluations, in-ring technical sessions, and sit-down interviews as part of the tryout process. The invite-only event features several athletes who attended the 2022 NFL rookie minicamps. And also, on the Friday, which will be the last of the 3-day tryout, they will have a tryout viewing experience where fans can attend for $20. You can come watch the tryout, and for $100, you can get your photo with WWE superstars and legends. So look at that. You could come watch the tryout, stick around for The Undertaker to do his talk show, What a weekend.
What a day.
It would be really interesting, I think, to sit in on these tryouts, although I would imagine it's going to be very much curated for a public viewing experience rather than maybe the nuts and bolts of how these tryout sessions go. But Paul Levesque will be at these tryouts, and Big E had also stated he will be doing something in coordination with these tryouts coming up. But probably at least a handful of signings that come out of this, much like we've seen in past tryouts.
I would think so. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know how often these tryouts are occurring, but they seem.
They did the last set at WrestleMania, so it seems like, and then they did
twice a year, 2 to 3.
Yeah, they did SummerSlam last year. Then they did WrestleMania, so it seems like you block out 2 seasons out of the year to bring in people that are on your radar or that you've sent invites out to, and tied to the NIL program.
Yeah, as much as I think there's a practical reason to do something like this to get looks at your next generation. I mean, it feels like it's very much a PR type of thing as well, don't you think, John? Releasing a statement like this and making such a big deal out of it, inviting fans to come and check it out. Are they trying to just position themselves as a prominent destination for athletes that are about to enter?
This is the marketing of the company as being very aggressive for athletes that maybe are not that NFL or other endeavors are not, that is not an option for them. That WWE is very much a door that you could knock on if you are a high level athlete coming out of college. So I think this is, and this gets them coverage on ESPN, other sports outlets. Like you look at past stories that have appeared on The Athletic, on ESPN, like you certainly are directing this at a traditional sports audience as well. An interesting question for SummerSlam. This was brought up on WrestleNomics. I'd be curious what you think. Is that usually around these big events, Nick Khan has done usually like one kind of state of the WWE company interview, whether it was on the town or with Ariel Helwani last year. Do you see Nick Khan doing any media surrounding SummerSlam, especially at a time where WWE, I don't know if you want to put one of your high-level executives into a Q&A scenario.
That is a very good point. Yeah. The benefit that he gains from doing these interviews, I wonder, I don't know if it would necessarily outweigh the, potential controversy that might stem from any sort of answer, and he's very good with all of his answers. Anytime he's, had to ask, had to talk about something controversial, but this is a different level. How does somebody who's an employee of Vince McMahon field, a question about the allegations that have, been brought up by these NDA agreements and whatnot?
It would take a lot of probing from the reporter because the flat answer is going to be, there is an ongoing investigation and I am awaiting the results of that investigation and cannot comment on it. And that's going to be his attempt to shut it down. And I don't think that's a sufficient enough answer. If you are willingly sitting down with a reporter while this story is ongoing, I think you do have to ask follow-ups beyond that. But it will be interesting. And maybe that would not be the case if he does.
I would say even the fact of an interviewer bringing it up and bringing that story to the top of mind, is that worth whatever extra PR you might get for a WrestleMania for a SummerSlam or any of their other projects?
Are you talking about WWE's, like what they get out of that?
Yes.
Yeah. That's certainly what you're weighing. I think obviously it's coordinated. They're very selective when they do put Nick Khan out there, but he does kind of become the spokesman for the company in these big situations that they have valued it in the past. But to Nick Khan specifically, I would be asking him, number one, that we haven't talked about yet, but Denise Salcedo's report about Netflix potentially dropping that Vince McMahon series. That is a huge story that I would want confirmation from Nick Khan. Is that done? And number two, is Vince McMahon a liability for your specific role of going out and selling these rights in the next period of negotiations? How much is this affecting your specific mandate that you were brought to this company essentially to lead? Like you can look at all of the different responsibilities Nick Khan holds. Those renegotiation rights would be the number one task that he has over these few years. And now you're sitting down and is this a tainted brand, or is this, like, here we are, is this still a major story in the real world about Vince McMahon? I think it should be, But I don't know, as we sit here on a Wednesday, several days removed from the last Wall Street Journal report.
It certainly is for me. But we're still relatively fresh off of it, aren't we? I believe there's something on SI talking about the Vince McMahon as well.
Yeah, on the website. I think that was more so just sort of a, kind of a recap of what the latest is.
But it's the recaps that are going to, keep the fire burning, so to speak, by keeping the story in the public eye. And when that stops, when we stop having maybe a flow of new information attached to it, that's when you start to see it die down. But interviews, for instance, with a Nick Khan, where something like this can be brought up, that's how the story in the news cycle continues to be focused on a story like this. So how much press is he going to do? How much is he going to put himself out there?
Yeah, I just thought it was an interesting question that Brandon brought up around SummerSlam. And if we see any kind of interview situations for Nick Khan or anyone else attached with it, Stephanie McMahon is now in a position as well that you would think maybe they're looking at it like, we need some positive press out there, and we can send out Stephanie and Nick Khan, who are very media savvy, and they'll be able to navigate whatever's thrown their way, and we can get a different talking point out there about the company as well. So that remains to be seen. Some recap notes from Tuesday's NXT. The main angle on the show, we had a show-long story involving Roxanne Perez being attacked by a mystery assailant, which is, these NXT wrestlers, they are walking targets in that parking lot around the premises of the Performance Center. So Roxanne Perez, they teased throughout the show she may not be able to compete against Mandy Rose, leading to Cora Jade coming out for the main event segment, and she was going to replace her tag team partner when Roxanne Perez came out, and she was willing to take the match while injured, and then Cora Jade attacking Roxanne Perez with the title belt, and then in the ring she comes and takes her very clearly gimmicked skateboard, which unfortunately broke in her hands before it made contact with Roxanne Perez. That I will imagine when we get the pristine video recap of this attack next week is going to look like the most devastating skateboard shot you have ever seen. But Cora Jade turning on Roxanne Perez as they are still your women's tag team champions. And that was the big angle on NXT.
This skateboard broke apart, I mean, even before it made contact. So I don't know how they're going to clean this shot up. I don't know what sort of CGI they can add to put that skateboard back together.
We'll get a super close-up of a skateboard hitting someone's back and destroying itself, just an extreme close-up.
Okay.
Maybe they'll have to play with it, because this was I don't know. I don't know why you'd have a gimmicked skateboard, but that's certainly what it appered to be. I mean, it was just broke in her hands.
They wanted the skateboard to break apart, and I mean, it looks to be like, that legitimate penny board, which I mean would not have split apart, no matter how hard she would hit this person with. So I don't know. I guess they sliced it in half, and it just played unfortunately pretty bad. But when we're talking about NXT, we're talking about, training. We're talking about practice, basically, for a lot of these people. And I think I saw a lot of disappointment, and I too am disappointed that they might have gone to this so quickly. They just won the tag team championships last week. So what's going to happen with the tag team division stemming off of this? And not really getting a chance to see their tag team chemistry, I think maybe takes away for a bit from the impact of this turn. But as far as training goes, this is Cora Jade, getting to flex some different muscles, and really Roxanne Perez getting, a very heated opposition now in order to hopefully advance both of their careers. But from some of the heel mannerisms I saw from Cora Jade, it's going to take a lot of work. It felt very much like switch. I'm me now. I'm evil now. So I'm going to snicker. I'm going to smile like this. It's just it's a bit much, but I mean, again, this is what we're watching. We're watching people practicing.
Yeah, it was definitely early. I mean, where these two have, just recently been anointed BFFs since day one. And I will say, though, Cora Jade was very much from the inception of NXT 2.0, seemed like designed to be the top female babyface. And I think when Roxanne Perez came in, thought she was a better candidate for that role. So I don't mind the idea of this turn, and it may be great for both in the end. But there's going to be a big spotlight on this feud, and it kind of removes them from the title picture. And yeah, you have the tag titles, which, I mean, that could be a benefit to the program. It also could be a major detriment to it as well, of how you figure out what to do with these tag titles, and how abrupt this decision was. It's not like this was something where it was brewing and you could sense that this turn was coming. This felt totally out of left field, and an idea that was just presented on Tuesday of the mystery assailant, and it turns out to be the big surprise that no one saw coming.
Certainly. Yeah. No, you always wonder, is somebody going to get an advance call up, or are they moving somebody else in for some reason? What is the reason for something that seemed to have come out of nowhere?
Have you ever been attacked by someone and not knowing their identity?
No. Yeah. Thankfully, no.
It's tough. It happens a lot in NXT. I mean, the person really gets their shot in, so you just don't know who attacked you. Not even like a sense of the person, like anything about them.
Despite all the cameras that are everywhere.
Yeah, it's stunning. Anything else of note from NXT? Do you like this QR code that they are continuing to tease at?
I think it's cool. Yeah, it gets people talking, and gets people, speculating, which I think, unless you're teasing somebody that's too much, like, unless you're setting expectations too high, I think it's healthy. And I feel like the detectives online have figured out that this is very likely the return of what's her name, person who got injured. God, I can't believe I'm blanking on her name. Person who Zoe Stark.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I like it. I think it's a cool way to reintroduce somebody. It's something that they haven't done before with like a QR code, and I think it just naturally heats up speculation, and it's a unique presentation too. So
yeah, the QR code this time around was some sort of wordle that basically kind of leads the guesser to guess the word havoc. So I think this seems to, and the first one was the date, that 8/10/11. Somebody figured out, and credit to whoever figured this out on the internet. But it was the time that she got injured. 8:10 p.m. 11 seconds. So
what? How did they figure that out?
That's I don't know. There's some really real geniuses that are out there that are looking into this far deeper than I think I can be expected.
Whatever. If the people behind this angle are thinking to that degree, I think that tells you like there's a lot of care in this, and not just some whimsical return. Like I like the fact that some work went into this, and anytime you're heightening speculation and interest, that's always a good thing. So I think it's been a clever way to reintroduce somebody.
Yeah.
Ratings notes. Let's go back to Sunday first, because WWE had their first block, at least for this year, on A&E, featuring the biography on The Undertaker, the Rivals episode between Brett and Shawn, and then Smack Talk. So the Taker bio did 582,000 viewers and a 0.14 in the 18 to 49 demo. So this would certainly be on the low side when you look at last year. And they ran 8 biographies last year, the most watched being the Steve Austin one. The least watched was Mick Foley. So if you compare this to last year, this would be by far the lowest in 18 to 49. They averaged a 0.27 for the bios last year. This one did a 0.14, and this would be the second least watched biography behind the Mick Foley one last year. And then Rivals, right after it, with Brett and Shawn, it dropped. They did 368,000 viewers, a 0.10 in the 18 to 49 demo, and then Smack Talk doing 222,000 and a 0.07. So I didn't look at these as spectacular numbers. I guess the most promoted is going to be the biographies, and this would be on the lower end. And I don't know if you read into that there is just less interest this time around, but we will see. It's not like they have a substandard list of subjects. I guess some are going to have more interest than others, but The Undertaker is a pretty big name. You would think Bill Goldberg kind of is of that ilk compared to last season's as well. But did you even check out The Undertaker biography?
I did not. No.
And I think that's probably the case for a lot of people. There's a lot of programming out there, and I don't know if any of this feels must see. And maybe it's also a sense of just nostalgia era programming on top of that. Like Brett and Sean is those are. There's a lot of name value there, but is this shoulder programming that used to be reserved for the WWE Network? I don't see it growing in interest as we see the second season on A&E.
But as we continue to come out of our Drive to Survive discussion, I don't think it's really for somebody like me. These are, I think they're basically outreach programs to try to advertise perhaps their catalog or at least just the WWE brand itself, so that somebody might become interested in the modern day product, perhaps. But obviously, if you're selling to A&E, you want these ratings as high as possible. But unless there's some promise of like more new information being released, I don't know how much of an interest there is to, people who have seen the Undertaker documentary series or who know plenty about Sean and Brett already.
Yeah, I would say if the wrestling fan is like the longtime wrestling fan is not all that interested in this, I think that's you're missing a big core audience if this is not attracting the person that is watching Raw every week. And I would say there was a time that I think this would be appointment viewing for wrestling fans. I don't know if that's the case, but we'll see. This is also, we're kind of an era removed now from like the 80s stars that we saw a lot of the focus on for last year, when you're talking about Savage and Piper and Austin, certainly more modern than those. But we're talking a next generation on top of it. But I just think it's more so an accumulation of the hours of wrestling that is watched every week, that I think people are more choosy now when it comes to 3.5 more hours of content on a Sunday night. It's not going to be appointment viewing. On Raw Monday night, they did 1,735,000 viewers, 0.44 in the demo. That translates to 578,000 in 18 to 49. So first on cable, up 11%. This is compared to last week, which was the low 4th of July number, and up 19% in the demo. In Canada, because there was no Blue Jays game on, they were number one among sports programming with over 187,000 viewers, up 5% from the week prior. But this was, I would say, a average Raw number. This was certainly down from 2 weeks ago with Cena's return, and 2 weeks before, or a week before the Cena return, when you still had kind of the Vince McMahon focus that led to a very big number on Raw. So this is sort of closer to your NBA playoff numbers than it is to off season, but first on cable nonetheless, even with that third hour way.
Even with the third hour, yeah. I mean, even with Brock Lesnar, it just feels like it's a bit of an average show, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't think Brock is a mover in that sense, especially when it's just an appearance. I think at this point, that's not special enough that it's going to affect the numbers or people tuning in. The first hour was actually very bad for Raw. In 50 plus, they started off very low. When you look at the first hour, it was a 0.89, so I take that back. But yeah, it was I would say like a good number, not a great number. Miz and Mrs. there you see doing 669,000 and a 0.20 as well. So finishing behind Raw, but still a solid placement for Raw, I think, as people can imagine. We move on a bit, and one thing I want to bring up that we didn't get to talk about last week with all the news that was going on is Chris Jericho did dedicate an episode of his podcast last week to finally talk about his health issue that he had last December while he was over in the UK for a Fozzy tour. And, he has referenced it in regards to, the great shape he got himself in, and has repeatedly said he would explain it at some point. But this was the first time he really went into depth about it. And the cause of all this was that he had a pulmonary embolism, which is basically he had blood clots forming in his lungs, and even evidence of a clot in his throat. And he was detecting this on this tour of Fozzy last November, where he was losing his breath during one of the shows, which he said is something that never happens to him. He said, even wrestling as well, he had gotten up to 241 pounds, but he did not get winded. His cardio was not an issue. So when he was getting winded doing these concerts. It was something he took note of. And after a follow-up show, it got to the point where he could not do another show where he was getting so winded like this, and ended up going to seek out a doctor while over there, and he was booked for a heart scan. He was having difficulty walking. He had to cancel a press day, and this is where they determined the blood clots, and they had to get him into a hospital immediately. He was huffing and puffing after several steps, and his oxygen level, he stated that the normal range is 98 to 100, and his oxygen level was down to 92. So he did get put on oxygen, and this did lead to Fozzy having to cancel several shows and put out a statement, and it was noted that he was in the hospital. So you can imagine like the concern that was, what is going on with Chris Jericho. He had stated to his knowledge, they have never canceled a Fozzy show before. So this was significant. But he ended up being in the hospital for several days and had to remain in the UK because his oxygen levels had to be at a certain level before they get him onto a hospital. And to his credit, you hear a lot of these stories where the performers are very stubborn and just want to ignore doctors' advice and go on with the show. It seemed like Jericho did take this very seriously and was not in a race to just get onto an airplane and defy any orders. I think he realized this could be serious and was going to be patient about it. But once he got back home in Tampa, it was determined that he needed to lose visceral fat, which is essentially fat that forms around the organs. And he went to a weight loss clinic. He lost weight pretty quickly. And he explained that the reason for his size, why he put on so much size, was around the start of the Kenny Omega program in 2018, going to New Japan, where he's not the tallest guy, but he could put on size and it would make him stand out more in New Japan. And he just never lost the weight afterwards. And it wasn't, in his mind, affecting his performance in any way, but lost 11 pounds in the first week. He said he's now around 209 pounds, down from 241. But he couldn't wrestle for a period because he was on blood thinners, and has now learned that it's as long as he doesn't take a blood thinner 36 hours before a match, that's just that several athletes they do this. And he went on to explain how this hiatus from inside the ring led to the creation of the Jericho Appreciation Society, because around the same time Jericho was ready to come back, Eddie Kingston had the broken orbital bone, and they just kind of played off some of the lines that Santana and Ortiz had introduced, and it led to the creation of the Jericho Appreciation Society. So he is still on blood thinners, but the doses have been reduced. And yeah, he kind of just used this at the end about it. It was, kind of a wake up call to get into better shape, and also noted that it was a byproduct of this was that he was getting stale as a babyface, noting the GFY stuff that he admits was not getting over, and also brought up how people were very critical of his weight online, and they're silent now that he has gotten into better shape. But that is kind of Chris Jericho's story, and just hearing it, like, you knew there was obviously something of significance that happened, but the details are rather sparse. And just going into this, like, this was a pretty notable issue, and it seemed that he did tackle this with the severity it warranted.
Yeah, and I think we're all happy to see it. He's gotten into great shape. He's healthier, and probably is going to be around for a lot longer as well. So it sounded really serious and very scary. So we were all wondering a bit, and yeah, I guess nice of him to let the audience know exactly what happened.
And is doing a barbed wire match next week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, there you have it. Last thing we'll touch on is Dynamite tonight. It is week 1, part 1 of Fyter Fest. This is going to be broken up, I guess, into 4 parts over Dynamite and Rampage over these 2 weeks. And I think it's a pretty intriguing lineup tonight. They're in Savannah, Georgia. It is going to be the Triple or Nothing AEW Tag Team Championship match with the Young Bucks defending against Swerve in Our Glory and Ricky Starks and Powerhouse Hobbs. Then we have the TNT Championship, as Wardlow will be defending against Orange Cassidy. A non-title match between Jon Moxley and Konosuke Takeshita. Claudio Castagnoli versus Jake Hager, Anna Jay versus Serena Deeb, and as well, we're going to hear from Christian Cage, with Luchasaurus in action, and Chris Jericho will also be on the show. I think there's some very interesting matches on top of this. I think the most interesting one is Moxley and Takeshita, with it being a non-title match that you certainly have something in Takeshita. I think in all of his big outings, he's gotten over in a big way, and I would not dismiss the idea of Takeshita winning this, and you have a great return match for Battle of the Belts in a couple of weeks with Moxley and Takeshita. Could you see them going that direction?
I can, absolutely, and I can because we just saw them do it this week with Thunder Rosa and Yuya Mashita, actually, in Tokyo Joshi Pro, a match that just they played on AEW Dark to set something up. Is Takeshita at a level now where I think he would attract an audience for Battle of the Belts title defense? I think if the quality of the match tonight is excellent, and I think all accounts indicate that it will be, I think it can attract a decent amount of interest. The fact that we're even talking about it, and considering the fact that he could beat Jon Moxley, suggests to me that I think there's plenty of interest in seeing Konosuke Takeshita, get a bigger push and do something more. So I think it's certainly possible.
Yeah. I would say if Takeshita were to win this, I would argue that should go on last and be the lasting image of the show, is this massive win, because we don't see the top guys lose all that often, especially on television. I think it'd be a real notable ending to the show. But you also have the tag title match. Wardlow and Orange Cassidy is also an interesting match, that you're putting Wardlow up against Orange Cassidy, and I think the audience will be very telling in this match about how they are responding with a pretty sympathetic babyface in Orange Cassidy with your monster.
I have to imagine they have a pretty interesting match planned out, because I don't see Wardlow simply delivering 10 power bombs to Orange Cassidy and then squashing him for a finish. I don't know if that's the best way to continue a babyface push for Wardlow, because Orange Cassidy is so beloved and he's on an upward trajectory himself. At the same time, I don't see Wardlow losing. I don't see Orange Cassidy winning. But how do you maintain Orange Cassidy's, great babyface momentum he's been building ever since the last pay-per-view? I don't know. It's a really interesting one, but I have to mention that they have a very unique type of match planned out that'll probably benefit both parties coming out of it.
Yes, and then the Battle of the Real Americans with Castagnoli and Jake Hager. It's I like this lineup a lot. It'll be interesting as well to see. This is a themed show that sometimes makes a difference, but a lot of intriguing matches on this show. You have several stars wrestling between the Bucks and Moxley. You have a Jericho segment. So this I think could be a very good show tonight.
I appreciate Dynamite because they're all first time matchups. We have, or at least matches we haven't seen in their current incarnations. And at the very least, even if it's not necessarily for a championship, I'm curious to know how the match will look. I'm curious to know, in many cases, what the outcome will be, because it indicates what further direction that the characters will be going into. But there's always some answer being given to me by the end of the show.
Yeah, they'll also be taping Rampage, which has the Jonathan Gresham Lee Moriarty match. So I would think by the end of Rampage, they should probably have that ROH title picture set up for Death Before Dishonor, because we're just over a week away from that pay-per-view as well. So we've got to set all of that stuff up.
We got some super chats, John, to get to before we get out of here. A lot of them, actually. So thank you guys for all your support. We first go to Rory from Australia, who sends $8 Australian to us. Thank you so much for the support, Rory. He says, first the hangout and now the news show. Damn. Enjoy the extra time off, John and Wai. Enjoy every moment of the journey to parenthood. Thank you. Well, Rory, even though the cafe hangout went away, we pretty much put 10 different shows up in place of it. So who knows? This one goes away, and 10 more shows might pop up as well.
It used to be the G1 was the daunting undertaking, and now it's enjoy the time off as you do the G1. That's
pretty much. The G1 is our break now.
Yeah.
We go to Plethora 1C, who sends $5. Who says, if you guys were Tony Khan, if you signed Sasha Banks, Would you sit her down with Sammy G and talk things out, or just ignore and let them handle it? Something tells me, Plethora, that those two have already handled their issues privately.
I think they flat out, either one side or both have stated as much, that there was private conversation. So I think if there's no existing issues between the two, I don't see any reason why you would have to interject yourself. I mean,
yeah, I understand. Like, you know, in the public, we only get little morsels of information, and I think we like tend to create these narratives in our head about like, oh, these people must not know each other outside of it. But we probably get 10% of the actual information that actually goes on in these people's lives, if that. So, you know, I don't doubt that I don't think this will be any issue. But if she does indeed if she comes into AEW. All right, let's go to Charlie, who sends $5. Thank you for the support, Charlie. He says, I wanted to catch one of these before you guys finally wrapped up. Enjoyed chatting with you guys yesterday. Enjoy the well-deserved vacation, guys. So this must be Charlie Ryzik.
yes.
Executive producer.
The one who chose the Drive to Survive review. So you can also hear him and some of his thoughts on the Rewind Away show we just dropped.
Thank you, Charlie, for choosing the show and for the super chat. Rory, one more time, sends an $8 Australian super chat. He says, I'm pumped for Dynamite. Hope some announcements are made. I'm hyped for the G1. Saw Cardona, Mundo, Trey Miguel, Alex Zane, and Taya here in Melbourne last weekend.
Oh, all right. Yes, big tour.
And finally, we got a Jake from the Windy City who sends $5. Thank you for the support, Jake. He says, a great watch I saw recently. Vice had 2 spin-off Dark Side of the 90s episodes, one on the UFC during the No Holds Barred era. Robin Black was on it too. Do you hear about this, John, or did you get to catch it?
I haven't seen. I don't think the episode's out. I think is it a trailer? I know that they were developing, an episode on, kind of the rise of the first boom period of the UFC in the mid-90s.
Okay, we actually have one more super chat here from Bruce Lord, who sends $5. Thanks, Bruce. And Bruce is going to actually be a part of some of our G1 podcasts. So, actually, no, he's going to be a part of the. He is. He's not only going to be a part of the podcasting lineup, he'll also be writing reports on the site. So, Bruce says, don't mourn the departure of the new shows. Celebrate the arrival of the most wonderful time of the year, G1 season, the Yoshihashi of E Block. That's
the loose explosion, Bruce Lord.
Wow. Jake actually says the Dark Side of the 90s UFC show is out already. All right. And that's it.
Okay. We're back tonight, everybody. Rewind to Dynamite at 10 p.m. Eastern time. Minutes after Dynamite ends, when we are going to be in a cold sweat from recapping the show, we will be live. So tune in here right on the YouTube channel, and we will have all of our thoughts on Dynamite. And last plug here for the G1 content coming up. The contest is open until Friday night at midnight. So get your picks in, postwrestling.com/G1. You can make your picks. It only takes a couple of minutes. And again, it is free to join. And we will be monitoring the standings throughout and then crowning the G1 winner at the end, the true winner of the G1. Podcast starts Saturday and Sunday. We will have written reports on the site throughout the tournament from Mark Buckledy and Bruce Lord, and lots of guests joining us on the G1 podcast that will be available exclusively at postwrestlingcafe.com. So for Wai Ting, I am John Pollock, and thank you for tuning in to the Post Daily News Show.